Hi everyone, and welcome back to my first video on my first step on my employment tribunal journey. My name's Lisa and I successfully represented myself as a litigant in person through the employment tribunal process against my former employer in 2022. So I really wanted to make this video to highlight something that happened to me in my case because it kind of crept up on me. I didn't realise until it was too late and I'd already lost my job that this was relevant. So I just wanted to highlight it, just basically to make anybody who's watching this video aware that if you've ever been issued anything like this by your employer and obviously you have been dismissed, please take another look at it because it could have some bearing. But also for people who are employed, just really as a kind of warning to say that if you are issued anything by your employer or anything's put in place, then don't automatically just accept it. If you feel something's wrong, then make sure that you speak out and make sure you address it, because if you do, then you could potentially end up saving yourself, ending up in a employment tribunal like myself and my former employer. So before I get started on what happened, a little bit of background information. I had started work for my former employer in 2010 as a full-time member of staff. They were the UK's largest payroll and audit provider in the UK for construction. I primarily worked in the payroll and administration section when I first started. Also did some work in the sales department and in marketing. Been there a couple of years when I was approached by a member of the management team to advise that they were splitting the main processing office into two, namely an administration section and a payroll section. And I was asked if I would like to head up the administration section as a team leader. Took the job on, absolutely loved it, worked with the people in my team who I'd been working with for a while, recruited and trained up some new members of staff. Everything was going really, really well. Got on with my employers. We live in a small town. They were a family business, affluent business, no problems, no issues whatsoever. Really enjoyed my job, pretty boring, pretty run-of-the-mill. Everything was going absolutely fine. I continued my job as team leader until 2015 when I had my daughter, and I returned back to the office as a part-time member of staff and was placed in the payroll section. Continued working in the payroll section 16 hours a week over a Monday and Tuesday until I had my son in 2017, and then returned back to work again and was placed back into the administration team. All going along absolutely fine. Again, no problems, nothing at all to worry me or concern me. We got into March 2020, and as we all know, the COVID pandemic started to hit the UK. The country was starting to go into lockdown, and my employer, like many employers, wanted to put something together so that they could continue trading and continue offering a service to clients. Obviously, because we were primarily based in construction and the construction industry continued to work, we were able to continue to trade and, provide that service. So it was the 16th of March when my journey started. I was at work, it was a Monday morning, and an email dropped into my inbox entitled High Importance. Opened it up and it said that there was an attached document which all members of staff were to read, and we were advised that if we had any queries on the document that we had to raise it with an immediate superior, and obviously we needed to read it, we needed to understand it. The first important thing about this email was that it had been sent to all staff. So the Bridlington office, the Manchester office, the Guernsey office, the sales team, the audit team, everybody had received the same email. And basically it was to outline what the company were going to do in order to keep running through the lockdown should it happen, which obviously we now know that it did. And the most important factor in this document for me came when the management had split all employees into two groups. So initially we had group one, which was the key worker group, and they were the people who were going to be offered the choice to work at home. they were going to be supplied with a computer kit to do so. They would be able to continue their role within the business, earn a full salary, and the only real difference for them would be that instead of coming into the office, obviously they would be remote working from home. This group, the key worker group, consisted 100% of full-time workers. So that was the common denominator between them. They were male and female. They were from all various departments, so the sales team, the payroll team, the administration team, but primarily everybody in the key worker group who was going to be supplied with a computer kit to work at home, to earn a full salary, were full-time members of staff. Obviously, I wasn't included in that because I was a part-time member of staff. So then we got to group 2. And group 2 were the people who wouldn't be given the choice to work at home. We wouldn't be ordered a computer kit, so we wouldn't be able to perform our role. I later realised that nor would we receive a full salary, and we would just basically be sent home and remain there until it was safe for us to be able to return to the office. The thing that everybody had in common in group 2 was that along with myself, it consisted of 100% of the part-time staff in the company at that time, all of which were women, all of which had young children like myself. And it also included the 4 individuals who had less than 2 years service. So all the part-time workers, the 4 people with less than 2 years service, wouldn't be provided with a computer kit, wouldn't be able to work from home, and as I later found out, wouldn't be earning a full salary. Excuse me. So the first thing I did was go to my team leader and say, why have I been placed in group 2? My partner's self-employed. Obviously, he was feeling the effects already of the COVID and his work had died off. I said, he's going to be at home. This really is going to be our only source of regular income. I can work, I want to do my bit. I don't just want to sit at home doing nothing. I've got childcare. Can I have a computer kit? Can I be put in the key worker group? And she said, well, the general manager's skiing in France at the moment, but when he comes back, I'll speak to him, and certainly if it's an option, then they'll get in touch. So fast forward a couple of weeks, the country's now gone into lockdown. The plan's in force, so all of the key workers have been given the choice to work at home, which many of them did. They were posting on social media that they were working at home, and all the people in group 2, including myself, were now at home. I had a couple of phone calls with my manager, chasing up the fact that, I could work, and I just reiterated the fact that, I was able to work, and if a computer kit was available, could I have it? And he said that the kits had only been ordered for the key workers in group 1. I wasn't in that group, so therefore there was no equipment for me. I received my monthly pay statement during the time that I was off and saw that it had been reduced. So when I questioned that, I got told that we weren't going to be furloughed, but that the company had devised its own sick scheme, in effect, to pay the people who were at home. In my case, it was less than my salary, and I think for the majority of other people, for some, substantially less than their normal salary. And we were told to just keep things as they were until a time that we were basically instructed otherwise. I had an email in May saying the same. We're just going to keep things as they are for now. I had my appraisal during this time with my team leader and my general manager. All really good, all really positive. Again, absolutely nothing that gave me any cause for concern. And I was just told that, we'll keep in touch and we'll let you know when we need you. And then we fast forward to the 10th of June when I received a call from my general manager basically to say that due to the COVID, the company were not in the greatest situation. They were restructuring and they decided to make redundancies, and that would potentially apply to me. And I'm going to pick that back up again in my next video because there was things during that call that could be really relevant to help people. But for the time being, I really want to go back to the email that was sent to me on the 16th of March because when I was made redundant, there was a lot of things that didn't add up for me. And one of which was the fact that I'd found out that from the groups that the employees were split into, through the restructure, absolutely nobody from the key worker group, the full-time group, had lost their employment during the supposed restructure and redundancy. Yet 5 out of the 10 people in group 2, which were part-time workers and less than 2 years, had lost their jobs, and I was included in that. And I started to think that maybe I should have questioned it a little bit more, because it sent a little bit more than coincidence to me that nobody in the key worker group had lost their jobs, yet half of the people in group 2 who were told to stay at home and who weren't provided with kits to work had lost their job. And it was then I really started researching into documents and procedures that employees are asked to follow. And I came across something called a PCP. And I really just want to go into a few details about a PCP before I finish, because this could be really relevant to you. So first question, what is a PCP? Well, a PCP is a provision, criterion or practice that applies to all. However, it puts one group or certain individuals at a detriment or at a disadvantage who share a protected characteristic. So in my case, the email applied to all staff. However, obviously it had a much more detrimental effect on the part-time members of staff and those under 2 years service than it did for the full-time members of staff. So when a PCP is used, well, PCPs can be used in anything from a job advertisement to a company contract, a company handbook. They can be verbal, they can be written, they can be pinned on a notice board. It can be something if you've started a new job and you've kind of questioned something and been told, well, you know, we've always done it like that, or, well, that's what the management say that we have to do. You know, it may well be that if that policy or that procedure or that practice discriminates against somebody, then it needs to be raised, because maybe some employers genuinely don't realise that they're discriminated against people, but that really is no excuse. So the next question, which I thought of, was, well, surely a PCP would be really obvious. And you would think that it was at the time, but for me, I had no reason to think that my former employer was going to negate on their duty of care towards me. I had no reason to suspect anything at the time. The only reason I'd kind of questioned it was because I thought it was a bit unfair on the full-time workers, because obviously they were having to work and it was kind of like the part-time workers didn't. But obviously I'd been, told what I was told, and I let it lie. But the thing with the PCP is that it's a really sneaky little dude, so it can just creep in without you even knowing about it. And just because something isn't directly discriminatory, so it doesn't actually, directly discriminate against you or anybody else, it can indirectly discriminate against a group of people or an individual, and that is still cause for concern, and also could be cause for a claim through an employment tribunal. So for an example, it could be something like a job advertisement. So a job advertisement applies to all. Anybody can apply for the job, it's put out there for everybody to see. But just at the bottom, or just kind of in the middle somewhere, kind of in somewhere unsuspecting, it may just drop something like minimum of 5 years experience necessary. Straight away, that's going to be indirect age discrimination, because obviously anybody younger, or depending on your circumstances for whatever reason, may not have had the opportunity to gain 5 years experience. So straight away those people are just not going to be considered for that job. Secondly, could be something like if you've been working in a role for a while and you're part-time, and all of a sudden it filters down the ranks, or you get sent an email, or say a notice is pinned up on a notice board to say this department's no longer going to be suitable for part-time workers. We're now moving all the part-time workers elsewhere. Don't necessarily have to be made redundant, maybe find you another role in the company, but primarily this department's just going to be full-time now. Straight away, again, that's indirect discrimination on the basis of sex discrimination, because statistically the majority of part-time workers are women, because statistically, primarily, females do have caregiving responsibilities rather than their male counterparts. So straight away, something like that is discriminatory against you on the basis of indirect sex discrimination. So if you are unsure, or you want to go to your employer, or you want to even speak with ACAS about a PCP that's been given to you, and this doesn't even have to be enforced, it could just be something that they're planning to do in the future, it could be something that's happening right now, or it could be something that they're potentially looking to implement. But in order to be able to raise a claim on a PCP, you need to have what's called a comparator. What's a comparator? Well, a comparator is somebody else who the PCP applies who doesn't share your characteristic. So to give you an example, in my case, a comparator would have been a member of staff in the administration who were full-time, or a member of staff in the administration or payroll team or in the company that were male, who still had children the same age as myself, but who were both given the option to continue working and earning a full-time salary, whereas myself, because I was part-time and I had children, I wasn't given that option. Sometimes if you maybe are a sole employee, or if you do a role within the business that nobody else performs, you can use a hypothetical comparator. Again, if you look online and if you speak to people like ACAS, Citizens Advice, they'll be able to give you more information on that. Obviously, do some Google searches, but that is a route to go down if you fall under those circumstances. Another important thing to remember before you raise a claim through an employment tribunal, or even if you do, something to be prepared for. Another question, can a PCP be justified? Well, astonishingly, even though it discriminates against people, yes, it actually can. So basically, what will happen if you raise a discrimination claim on a PCP is that your employer or former employer will have to prove that that PCP was put in place to achieve what's called a legitimate aim for the business. So what they basically have to prove is that although they maybe knew at the time, or although it's been brought to their attention since, that this PCP discriminates against an individual or a group of individuals who share a protected characteristic, the benefit of the PCP outweighed the negative, which was the discrimination. So they basically have to prove that they have looked at all other reasonable avenues, they've tried to get round it every which way they can, but unfortunately, for a health and safety requirement of the business, for an economical need of the business, for a financial need of the business, they have to prove that they basically had no choice whatsoever but to put that PCP in place. Now, that can come down to their evidence, it can come down to your evidence, it can come down to the judge, and if it's a discrimination case, possibly a panel at the final hearing. But they will have to prove evidence that the PCP was justified, just as you will have to provide evidence that you feel the PCP was not justified. So what I've done is I've put a little slide together to add on to the end of this video, and I'm saying that now because I haven't had a go at doing it. So if it doesn't add to the end of this video, then please come off this video and just click onto the next upload, because I'll pop it on there, and it's really going to simplify and just go through everything that I've kind of said today, so that you don't have to sit and listen to me rabbiting on about it again. But what I've included in there were my reasons as to why I felt felt the PCP that was present in my case was discriminatory against myself and other part-time employees. And what you have to do is you have to set out what the PCP was, the reasons why you feel it was discriminatory, and the impacts on yourself. So what impact did that discrimination have on you? I was asked for this at a case management hearing, and it was on a case management order. I had to provide it. So I've attached my actual one on the slideshow. Looking back now, it's really not that great. Obviously, I was at the beginning of the process. I was really naive. I really didn't have very much knowledge surrounding employment law. So I can't promise it'll be any great help, but just really so that you know what you're going to be expected to provide and how you're going to be, expected to provide it. So really just to summarise before I finish, just to say that, even if an employer tells you something, sends you an email, sends you a document, updates the handbook, makes changes to your contract, makes changes to your working hours, it could be anything. But if you don't feel happy with it or you feel something is wrong, please learn from my mistake. Don't trust that your employer has got your best interest at heart. The only person who's got your best interest at heart is you. And you really need to take responsibility for it. Arm yourself with information. I always say now, forearmed, forewarned, you really have to arm yourself with the facts. So there's ACAS, the Citizens Advice, there's quite a lot of advisory services if you search online. Do something about it, and hopefully it may stop you ending up in the same situation as I did. So I'm going to be back again soon with the next instalment, and that's going to be talking about the phone call that I received that I briefly touched on the 10th of June. So again, thanks for watching. If you like this video or you found it really helpful, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, if you can subscribe to me, I'm on YouTube. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I've also got a thing going on TikTok. I'm still trying to get to grips with that, but I'm hoping to kind of upload it onto all different platforms. Again, even if you're not going through this at the moment, but you know somebody who is, please tag them in, share the page. The more awareness we can get surrounding, unfair dismissal, discrimination, employment tribunals, because employees are fighting back. And likewise, if you get on really well with your employer, tag them in, because sometimes unknowingly employers can do things and really not realise the impact that it's going to have on an individual, on their employees, on their workforce, on morale, and they could find themselves in an employment tribunal. And one thing that I will just bang on about all the time through these videos is prevention is so much better than cure. If we can stop the problem at source, I genuinely believe that it would make for a much better working environment, a much better working relationship, and it would prevent so many cases ending up in an employment tribunal, because believe me, I've been through it. You really don't want to end up there if you don't need to. So anything that you can do to prevent that happening, please take that into your own hands. In order to make change, we have to speak up, because change doesn't happen on its own. So on that note, I'm going to sign off. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you the next time around.